Station for Step 8, we can confirm
really hard to
vehicle
believe that we're
mode
looking
is
at.
hold. Minimum range observed was 19.75. Orientation is expected. Vehicle is in the corridor and holding at 20. Performing review.
Right now you're seeing a view from that center line camera. This is rebroadcast from the International Space Station. So this is what the astronauts on the station are seeing. It looks like it's aligned right and ready to dock. It's what I was saying before. It's sort of unbelievable. This is the same spacecraft that we saw yesterday on top of the Falcon 9 at Kennedy Space Center. And now it's in space just 20 meters away from the International Space Station.
Yeah, and it's all coming to this. It's all coming to that go for docking, which we're going to stand by again. The teams are now going to be doing kind of their final go, no go poll, and then they're going to get the call, and we're going to hear it, and it's going to be Dragon is go for docking. So just 20 meters away, successful hold. I didn't comment earlier, but we did hear that there was a good controllability demo. Again, that was just a demo, just slowing Dragon down to basically mimic the final speeds that it'll be at for docking, and that was also done successfully. So we're going to stand by, continue to get this great view of Dragon, and wait for that final go for docking. All right, and right now we're just continuing to hold. Dragon still just 20 meters away from the space station. And all the teams now just taking a final look at the data. Dragon's moved through all the demos so far without any issues, not tracking any on the spacecraft, and continuing to get some good views as we do have that signal with the International Space Station. So holding at 20, and then we're going to be listening for the final go, no go for docking. Then it'll be time for Dragon to close in.
This is currently a beautiful view of Dragon 2 in full sunlight. Many of us at SpaceX have waited years for this view, approaching the International Space Station. Just a quick note about the features you can see on the Dragon 2 from this view. Obviously, the big structure at the top is the nose cone in its retracted position. It rotates away from its stowed position for launch and back towards where it is right now for docking and orbital operations. You can also see that soft capture ring. Right now, it's deployed and out in front of the hatch. A bit tough to see the distance between the soft capture ring and the hatch, but it's standing off just a little bit and ready to make contact with the international docking adapter.
Houston Station, crew is ready for docking.
Those 4 Draco thrusters around the hatch.
And we copy.
And we just heard Ann McLean report the crew is ready for docking.
And we're currently assessing lighting.
And that call back from the Capcom in Houston, Leslie Ringo, just the teams looking at the lighting. As Tom mentioned a little while ago, the sun is expected to set in about 12 minutes on the station and Dragon, so they'll be heading into an orbital nighttime. So I think they just want to make sure they have all the right conditions for the final approach and docking of this spacecraft. Again, the crew's going to be monitoring, and they're using that centerline camera now to monitor primarily from that 20-meter point all the way in. They're going to continue to be in the loop all the way up until just 2 meters away, and then we might hear a call out over the space to grounds chop which stands for Crew Hands Off Point. That just means everything at that point is in the hands of Dragon and the space station, including abort commands.
One important thing to remember here, and this sort of just blows my mind every time I stop and think about it, is Dragon looks like it's perfectly still with respect to the space station, and it is, but both the space station and Dragon are moving at 17,500 miles per hour in orbit around the Earth. The orbital mechanics and math required to line these two spacecraft up together is just sort of mind-boggling, and it's always impressive to see it happen in real time like this.
And Station Houston on 1. While we're holding here, please command the docking light to on, ON.
Copy, commanding docking light on.
And so the crew's going to command the docking light on Dragon.
Can we copy?
And then we hear confirmation that the command's been sent. Again, this is what the astronauts on board are looking at right now. This is that centerline camera that they're using to watch as Dragon makes that final approach. The team's all looking at systems, and they're also looking at the communication coverage between here and the International Space Station. They do want to make sure we have a good signal for that final approach and docking, so we might be standing by for a couple of minutes. Dragon able to dock in daytime or nighttime, that is not going to matter for today's operations, but they are going to be looking to make sure we have a strong signal, and we might have a short dropout coming up in just a couple of minutes. So we're going to stand by. Dragon's continuing to hold at just 20 meters away.
You mentioned that docking light being turned on. This is special for me, even in particular, having worked on both the communication system between the Dragon and the space station, and also on that centerline camera module, which has the LED that they were talking about. I spent months at SpaceX with a unit of that on my desk, testing that LED, and to see it happening in space is truly extraordinary.
I was going to ask. So Tom basically built the spacecraft. What is it? What is it like to see it sitting there? It looks unreal.
For me and everyone else at SpaceX that has poured their life force into this vehicle for the past how many years, it's unbelievable to see this thing flying for real. Like I said before, it's kind of wild to see this just 24, 27 hours ago on top of a Falcon 9, and now in space. It's sort of just a dream come true, is what I'd say.
And you can see the shadows starting to creep along Dragon. Again, we are going to be heading into that orbital nighttime shortly, as both Dragon and the International Space Station flying over the Indian Ocean right now. They're actually a couple hundred miles south of Australia, right between Australia and Antarctica. And pretty soon they're going to be crossing the Terminator line. That's the line separating night from day on the Earth's surface. And so things are going to get a little bit darker, but that's why we heard the crew get the call to turn the docking light on.
Sunset so that we have a good view of the backplate.
Mission copies.
And you just heard that call up to the station. So they are going to wait until sunset, until they resume that final approach, and then sunset is scheduled to come in just about 7 minutes from now at 45 after the hour. So we're going to stand by, continue to get these views of Dragons. We're going to lose signal for a couple of minutes shortly, and then that's going to lock back up right as the sun's going down, and then we'll be ready to move Dragon in from that 20-meter hold point to the docking. We're almost at docking.
There. So don't go anywhere. We're going to hold for just a few minutes. Sunset is expected at 2:45 a.m. Pacific time. So as soon as that happens, we'll be able to continue with the docking. Stand by.
Station Houston on 1, stand by as Dragon is about to resume approach.
Station copies.
And we just heard the call up to the International Space Station crew. Dragon is go for approach. You can already see the thrusters firing, so it's leaving that waypoint number 2 where it's been sitting at 20 meters away. Now it's time for the final docking.
At 20 meters, Dragon was just spitting distance away from that international docking adapter. Now it is closing those 20 meters in preparation for soft capture. So right now it is orbital nighttime, so the light you're seeing is both light from the International Space Station pointed at Dragon, and then the docking light, which is the bright spot in the center of Dragon's hatch you can see right now. Right now, Dragon's flight computer is using those Draco thrusters, as you can see them firing on your screen to
Station Houston on 1, Dragon is resuming approach and is go for docking. Monitor per steps 9 and 10 in 1.102. Dragon approach and retreat monitoring.
Station copies. Vehicle mode is approach to docking port. Primary range is decreasing. Vehicle is centered.
Copy all.
And getting good reports from Ann McLean there on board the International Space Station. Dragon is approaching, everything in on the center and still looking good. So the crew is using that centerline camera on the Dragon spacecraft just to do all of their final monitoring of the vehicle. This camera a little off center. This is not the one the crew's using, but this is one that we have. But you can see now that international docking adapter. It's attached to a larger black piece of the station. That's a pressurized mating adapter, which is then attached to actually one of the modules, which is known as Node 2 in the Harmony. It's the Harmony module. So Dragon continuing to close in. It's expected to take just about 5 minutes or so, and there's a great side-by-side look. One view on your left from Dragon, one view on your right from the International Space Station.
On the view on the left from Dragon looking at the space station, we can finally see those details of the international docking adapter. The IDA is a passive system, and the Dragon contains all the active components of that docking system. You can actually see those androgynous petals, those 3 petals that are kind of sticking at 120 degrees apart from each other on the IDA on the left-hand side. In the very middle is actually a visual docking target that the astronauts can use to judge whether or not the Dragon is right on course. It has a little stick that comes off from the center of it, so you can see the stick's shadow and determine whether or not you're directly on center in all 3 axes. Like Dan said, this camera view on the left from Dragon is not the centerline camera. It's actually the forward media cam.
Range is 9.5 and decreasing. Vehicle is centered. Largest excursion observed is less than half a meter. And less than half a degree.
Copy.
All right, we're inside 10 meters. Halfway there.
Like I was saying, this camera view right here is just a little bit off center from the center line, so it may look like we're not approaching that IDA directly head on, just because the camera's not in the right position, but the crew has that center line camera, which is directly dead on. And as long as we keep hearing these good callouts, it sounds like Dragon is dead right where it needs to be. And there it is. There's that center line camera view that the crew in the International Space Station is using. They use the overlays to figure out, and that visual docking guide right there to make sure that Dragon is exactly where it needs to be as it approaches. On the right-hand side, you can start to see the mechanisms of the SpaceX docking system aboard the Dragon. The very first part of Dragon that will make contact with the ISS is that soft capture ring. You can see it's extended forward from the hatch of the Dragon right now. As soon as those pedals make contact, latching pawls will engage and hold the pedals against the opposite ones on the IDA, and contact pins will depress, and we should hear the call out for soft capture achieved.
Crew hands off point.
Copy.
All right, so we're at that crew hands-off point. That means we're about 2 meters away. Crew no longer sending commands. Dragon doing everything on its own.
Soft capture confirmed.
She concurs.
You can hear the cheers behind us at SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. We have confirmation of a soft capture of the Dragon spacecraft to the International Space Station. You can see in your view the Dragon still moving around a little bit. That's the soft capture ring is attached to Dragon by way of 6 arms that are all attached to springs that help dampen the motion, the difference in the relative velocities between the Dragon and the space station. This is unbelievable news for everyone here at SpaceX and at NASA.
Yeah, that capture, that docking coming at 2:51 a.m. Pacific, 5:51 a.m. over on the East Coast. As the International Space Station and Dragon were flying just about 260 statute miles over planet Earth, just north of New Zealand. So
Ring retraction in progress.
Docked. Well,
we're not quite there yet.
Not quite there yet.
We've achieved soft capture, which is what the call you heard. So the next step is going to be hard capture. Hard capture is achieved via 12 latching hooks that are all around the inside of the Dragon hatch. And they'll actuate and grab onto hooks on the other side and pull and hold the Dragon tight against the ISS.
That's right. This whole process expected to take about 15 minutes. So first that soft capture ring is going to retract, and then the hard capture sequence can begin its process. That'll take about 12 minutes. And then there are 2 umbilicals that will actually get mated to the Dragon spacecraft from the station, and that is to provide power and data to the spacecraft and transfer that over to the station. And at that point, it will be fully attached and ready to stay for the next 5 days. So again, that capture coming at 2:51 a.m. Pacific time, 5:51 a.m. over on the East Coast, as the Dragon and station were flying just north of New Zealand. So there we go.
And you can imagine this, yeah, I mean, this is unbelievable for everyone here that's worked so hard on Dragon and with NASA. You can imagine that soft capture retraction, sort of like Dragon doing a pull-up and bringing itself closer to the station to get those hard capture hooks ready to go. Like I said, this is going to take just a few minutes, so the whole process takes about 15 minutes to get the soft capture ring retracted, the hard capture hooks engaged, and then those umbilicals mated. So we still got a little bit more ways to go here. Dragon is attached, and we're all very excited about that, but lots more to come.
Yeah, we're gonna hang out until that hard capture and everything is complete, and then after that, the action's not over. Then it's on to hatch opening. So it'll take about 2 hours after all of this is complete for the hatches to be open. At least that's what we're tracking on the timeline right now. In that space of time, they have to pressurize what's known as the vestibule. So that's actually the area of both Dragon and the space station that are normally exposed to the vacuum of space. That is now going to form a tight seal, and so they have to pressurize that. The crew will actually open up a seal manually and insert air from the station into that vestibule, and then they have to do a series of leak checks, obviously just to make sure that everything is good before they move to opening the hatches. And there's a hatch on the pressurized mating adapter side, and there's also a hatch on the Dragon itself. And so that'll be coming up a little bit later, and then we'll actually see crew members go inside of Crew Dragon in space for the very first time.
They can meet Ripley as soon as they get inside there.
That's right. And there is one passenger already on board the Dragon spacecraft now, attached to the International Space Station.
2 if you count the 0G indicator.
That's right.
That's the flying along with Ripley there. So for those of you just joining us, we did have a successful soft capture. Like we've been saying, it's going to take just a little bit longer with a lot more action coming up. So stay with us as we head towards eventual hard capture and then hatch opening. Be monitoring and ready to come back.
Ready to hook indicated. MCS reconfiguration in progress.
station copies and concurs. The undocking plate sensors are off. Congratulations to all of the teams on a successful docking.
And we copy in. Many thanks. Station Houston in 1, hook drive in progress.
Copy.
All right, and so the hard capture sequence is underway. We've already heard that the first set of hooks are in place. The second set now driving, so Dragon almost firmly attached to the International Space Station. Again, once this hard dock is completed, they're going to mate 2 umbilicals, which will actually provide some power and data to the spacecraft and allow it to transfer back and forth with the International Space Station. And you're going to hear calls throughout by NASA astronaut Ann McClain. That's who we're hearing right now. And then they're going to be on task to then start all the vestibule pressurization and eventually get the hatches open on the Dragon spacecraft and then go inside. And that's going to be the next really cool thing that we're going to be looking for in a couple hours from now.
That is true. That hard dock sequence, there are 12 total hooks in a ring all around the Dragon hatch, and they close those hooks by driving them, actuating them in sets of 6 each. And so we heard a call out for both the first set of hooks were closed, and we're getting close towards that full hard capture.
And you're probably hearing some cheers behind us.
1, we can confirm hard capture is complete.
Hard capture complete.
Excellent news.
That means that
Congratulations once again to a huge team around the world to make this possible.
The second set of rings was fully retracted
And we concur to
fully actuated,
the
and the
successes
Dragon is
of
now
the
hard
entire teams around the world.
All right, so Dragon now firmly attached to the International Space Station. So now again, this is going to kick off about 2 hours or so until we actually get those hatches open.
Houston Station, lab forward hatches open.
And so again, right now the crew's going to start. The crew's going to start moving in. They're going to open up.
And we can. We heard you copied on the lab port hatch is open. At this time, you guys do have a go to pick up in the first yellow activity on David's timeline for the forward PMA leak check and opening the No. 2 forward hatch. Be advised that we're going to need 15 minutes for ventilation to be complete before we'll have you pick up in further PMA activities.
Copy that and works, and we have the Note 2 HD camera on.
Copy. We'll come on board with you guys.
All right, well, now that Dragon has completed that docking sequence, it's going to undergo a series of checks. Again, they're going to pressurize the vestibule, and they're going to do some leak checks, and then we're actually going to be able to open up the hatch. For now, though, why don't we send it over to Gary real quick. He's standing by in the International Space Station Flight Control Room. Gary, how's everybody feeling there? It's got to be great. I mean, Dragon's now attached to the space station.
Definitely good vibes in here, Dan. Actually, as soon as we got hard capture confirmed, we had a round of applause here in Mission Control Houston. It was a very exciting time. The beginning, really, of a new era of human spaceflight. This is like the first step until we start having commercial crew providers bringing humans to the International Space Station, launching from American soil once again. Very exciting time. But for the crew, again, a lot of monitoring operations, successful retreat commands sent, everything. It was a very smooth docking for Dragon to the International Space Station, but still a lot of work to do. Again, like you said, they're going to be pressurizing the vestibule and then actually entering the hatch. We'll be covering that live. You might see them wearing hardline oxygen and taking some air samples, just part of the normal procedures for a new vehicle, or for this particular new vehicle, just to make sure everything is okay. And then maybe later on today, we'll be doing a nice welcoming ceremony to officially welcome Dragon to the International Space Station. So again, congratulations from the crew, from the teams here in Mission Control Houston. An amazing docking of Dragon to the International Space Station. A lot of work to do. We'll pass it back to you to really wrap us up, but we got a lot of work to do. Thanks.
All right, thanks so much, Gary. So we got this thing attached, and now again we're gonna wait a little while while they pressurize the vestibule, do the leak checks, and then it'll be time for hatch opening. So we are gonna take a little bit of a break, but before we do, we have a special guest who's just about to join us. We just talked to Doug Hurley a little bit earlier in today's broadcast. He's one of those 2 commercial crew astronauts who's actually slated to fly a Dragon into space a little bit later this year. And now, if we can have him come run in real quick, we have Mr. Bob Behnken, the other NASA astronaut. Bob.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Good to see you as well.
What's it like to see this thing dock to station?
Well, it's just been a super exciting week for us. We came from Florida after watching the launch, got on orbit, got activation done, and the next big milestone was autonomous docking and getting that demonstrated. Of course, the station crew is monitoring, but that's how we're going to be getting Dragon on board, docked on station in the future. And so it was just super exciting to see it. I know you heard the applause and all the clapping that went along with the accomplishment today. And so just one more milestone that gets us ready for our flight coming up here.
Now, Bob, how do you expect flying a Dragon 2 to be different than flying any previous spacecraft that you have flown?
I came to the space station before 2 times with the space shuttle. A lot of manual flying associated with that, so arriving underneath space station, making
Houston station on 1.
And then slowly coming into contact was all done manually.
Opening the Note 2 forward.
It took basically four people to monitor the systems at the same time that you were, accomplishing the flying task. Dragon's a lot different than that. Doug and I will do it for the first time together, primarily in a monitoring role. We may push a button or two to demonstrate that we have the capability to intervene if we need to. But the vehicle is pretty much going to do the work autonomously, just like it did today.
It's great to hear.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks so much for joining us real quick, Bob. Successful docking to the International Space Station, Dragon now attached. Again, so for now, we are going to take a quick break for about 2 hours while we wait for all the leak checks to take place, and then it's time for hatch opening. So we're going to see crew members go inside for the first time, and it sounds like everybody's getting pretty excited here at SpaceX headquarters.
So don't go anywhere. We will be back after a short break to cover the rest of hatch open when that comes around.